Cruise news time. Well, look, sometimes the cruise news is pretty vanilla, right? It's like Hugh Beaumont and Barbara Billingsley, the parents from Leave It to Beaver, just wholesome 1950s kind of thing. And then sometimes the cruise news is a big old dumpster fire like Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. What a performance that was. Well, the cruise news stories today are more like the Joker than Leave It to Beaver. Let's just say that. That's a weird way to get to it. But I've got a story about a cruise passenger reported missing and then found in the sea. I also have a cruise news story of a passenger who 20 years ago was convicted of cooperating with the Taliban on a cruise ship, unable to get off of the cruise ship because somebody knew who he was. Also, we've got a story of a fire on a popular cruise line. And well, at least to smooth it out a little bit, we have a new ship float out. That sounds amazing. Cruise news and my views. Why so serious? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Lido, Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news and views for your face for Friday, November the 25th, 2022. Cruise news story number one, a fantastical tale about a passenger on the Carnival Valor who was last seen by one of his relatives at 11 p.m. on Wednesday. He left a bar to go to the restroom and he was not seen again. His family members got concerned when they did not see him on Thursday, the next day, yesterday, Thanksgiving, and they reported him missing to the ship. There was a ship-wide announcement for the gentleman to report to guest services when he never showed up there. Well, it was decided that the ship would retrace its route to go see if they could locate this gentleman. At the same time, the Coast Guard was called in for a search and rescue, and the guy was found overboard. Guy was found overboard and responsive. The early reports are that he is responsive. There's not much more detail than that, but wow. What a crazy story. This did delay the Carnival Valor going to its port stop in Cozumel. It seems like a miracle from everything that we know about overboard situations that this gentleman would be found. Of course, we don't know what time that he went overboard. We don't know if he had, any kind of flotation device. But wow, hopefully the guy is okay. The fact that it said responsive in the early reports seems like a good indication, but we'll continue to watch and see for an update. It brings up an interesting question. If somebody that you were hanging out with, a relative of yours, goes to the restroom from the bar and doesn't return, do you sound the alarm that night? Do you go ahead and say, I think that my relative is missing? There's got to be more details about this to come out because there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of holes in that story. Wild nonetheless. How about that? Cruise news story number two. Let's talk about a fire on a Disney cruise ship. It was reported that there was a fire behind the big screen on the Disney Wonder. This is reported by the website WDW News Today. It was reported by the guests on the Disney Wonder that there was smoke and fire coming out of one of the speakers behind the funnel vision screen. These speakers are not necessarily close to the guest, but the funnel where the speaker was attached is close to the teen club. It's also reported on the WDW News Today site that a fire team put out those fires. The area was closed for a couple hours, but then reopened. Fire at sea on a cruise ship, certainly one of those top one or two things you never want to have to hear about or deal with. Sounds fortunate that this fire was able to be contained without much issue. Of course, that's what the crew members trained for. So thankfully, a positive resolution there. Cruise news story number three. Let me sneak in the kind of puppy dog story. We've got the latest float out of a new cruise ship, a big milestone in the shipbuilding process. And this time it is the float out of the Virgin Voyages Brilliant Lady. The Brilliant Lady will be the fourth cruise ship for Virgin Voyages. Currently in service is the Scarlet Lady, the Valiant Lady. Entering service next year will be the Resilient Lady, and then late next year we'll get the Brilliant Lady. She was floated out earlier today, Friday, at the Fincantieri shipyard in Genoa, Italy, and like her sister ship, she houses 2,770 passengers and weighs in at 110,000 tons. Kind of a cool realization that in about 1 year's time, Virgin Voyages' fleet will double, and they will have 4 cruise ships on the water. Virgin Voyages, how about that? Before we get to our next cruise news story, let me quickly invite you to subscribe. If you like staying up to date with everything that's going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you stay up to date on all of the cruise news. Well, the next story is wild. Do you remember the name John Walker Lindh? John Walker Lindh, often referred to as the American Taliban, was convicted of 2 counts of cooperating with the enemy in the early 2000s. This was post 9/11, and he was found in Afghanistan working with the Taliban with intentions against the United States. He was convicted of it. He served close to 20 years in prison, and well, now he's a cruiser. How about that? Look, that's the justice system. You get convicted, you do your time, you're able to live your life. I just never would have thought that all would come out to being a cruiser. But just because he served his time in the United States does not mean that every country is welcoming him into their ports of call. John Walker Lindh was denied entry to the port of Malaga, Spain. This was the first port that he tried to disembark from since his cruise started earlier in the month in New York City on the Norwegian Sun. The cruise had stopped at several other places, including Gibraltar and Gran Canaria. The cruise is already over, so it went from Malaga to Cadiz, Spain to Lisbon, Portugal. There's no update in the article whether he was allowed to disembark in Portugal, but I assume that he was. The cruise is already over, but yeah, that's a wild story. Again, I guess it shouldn't be shocking. Once people serve their time, they're able to go about their lives. But I would never think if I was on the Norwegian Sun that to be, oh, there's that guy. That's wild. I'm not sure how many of you guys saw Don's video from Don's Family Vacations yesterday about an acquaintance of ours who got scammed at a cruise port, and it's not an uncommon scam, but I wanted to let you know I also made this video about other travel scams to be on the lookout for. Make sure you check that video out next. This is Tony for Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.